Hello, young traveler. Would you like to learn about necromancy? Yes, mastering the power of undeath. DM Dungeon Mastery here with my skeletal bucket hat as well, and I'm here to show you my Necromancer Statblocks for D&D 5e. So let's get into the video. Hello everyone, welcome to the video. This is going to be the Necromancer Statblocks, and I have also made a couple bonus stat blocks. I made a zombie Thrall and a skeletal Thrall, so you don't have to homebrew up a quick zombie stat block. Also, I wanted to show you, I really like skeletons and skulls, so I also have skeletal slides that I wear on a daily basis, unironically. I know, I'm so edgy, bro. I'm so edgy. So let's do an edgy video and do necromancers. I mean, what better monster or adversary than a necromancer, right? They are the easiest things to throw at your players, and your players will understand the assignment. Bad guy. There's no gray area with necromancers. They are bad guys. They are making mockeries of life for your players to delve into those tombs, those catacombs. They can be very high level necromancers, or they could be very low level necromancers. I have actually made some really low level necromancers because I know it's fun to fight zombies at low level, but let's give them like a spellcasting human to stand in the background, or it doesn't have to be a human, any humanoid race, any race really it could be. So let's get into the first one, shall we? Okay, so starting off here, we have the Necromancer Apprentice. So this is going to fill that role of that low level adversary. You can have multiple of these. You can have these just be the single necromancer for your first level quest that you're running your players through. One thing that 5e lacks is like specific spellcaster stat blocks that kind of feel like that spellcaster. And also, like I always say, I hate hunting down spells. So this is another example of a spellcaster stat block that has all custom spells all implemented into the stat block, so you don't have to go look up spells. You can print these out, put them on your table. You don't have to have a stack of spell cards. You don't have to have 18 tabs open on your monitors with what each spell does. You don't have to subscribe to D&D Beyond just to play D&D and know what spells do what. I put them all on the stat block for you. So let's look at this Necromancer Apprentice. So very weak. And it's not even trying to hide that. It's very weak. Armor class of 10, hit points of 11. Basic stats across the board except charisma is at an all-time low with a 9, but the constitution and the intelligence are a little bit higher. Constitution, you're delving into tombs and stuff. You probably have a good immune system so you don't get sick from breathing in the undead rot all the time, so I felt like constitution made sense, and obviously intelligence, because they have an arcana and a survival skill also. You have to be somewhat smart if you're going to be casting arcane spells. They have damage resistance to necrotic. I think that makes sense. And they are immune to exhaustion because they've already begun the process of learning how to be one with the dead. They have a dark vision of 60 feet. If you're delving down into tombs and exhuming bodies out of the ground, you should have a dark vision. They speak any one language, usually common. They are a tier 1 challenge, or that is anywhere from CR, or anywhere from level 1 to 4. These guys fit right in. You just throw multiple of them if one's not enough. They have just spellcasting as their special trait. DC 12 for the DCs and a +4 to hit. All of their spells, because these are not leveled spells, they don't use spell slots, they just have the 2 a day, 1 a day, 3 a day type spells. For the purposes of counterspell, these count as level 2. Now let's get into the actions. They have an effigy staff, so I'll try to find a picture of something. I use Warhammer Fantasy as like my go-to when I picture a necromancer. So picture like a staff with a upper rib cage and skull hanging on the top of it. Looks like an effigy, really evil looking thing. And that's really, they're in a really bad spot if they have to use that as their weapon. It's sort of their spellcasting focus. But if in the off chance they're in a anti-magic field and they have to whack you with it, they'll try to whack you with it. Now let's go to the cantrips here. Now I'm going back and forth with myself. I might change cantrip to at-will spells instead of calling them cantrips, but yeah, these don't have a limited number of uses. They can use these as many times as they need. So Grave Touch, this is literally a touch spell. It does 2d8 necrotic damage, so they grab you and they infuse your skin and flesh with necromantic energy. 2d8 is a lot, but he has to be within melee range of you, so that's why it does so much at such a low challenge rating, basically. Bone Shard, it does 1d8 piercing and 1d8 necrotic. This is a ranged spell, so I picture, he causes this like bone shard that's in the shape of like a spear tip or something like that, a sharpened piece of bone. It's levitating with necromantic energy and it's infused with necromantic energy, and he fires it across the room. Then we have Claws of the Dead. This is a spell that forces a dex save, or you take 3d4 slashing damage. So picture a bunch of skeletal, zombified arms come clawing out of the ground and scratch the character before. They can even be spectral claws, just anything that makes sense. And you can only choose one target with this, but DC 12 dex save, 60 feet, 3d4 slashing damage. So does about the same damage on average as like a great axe, but it's more consistent. Then we have Corpse Speak. This is a role-playing spell. This is just to make sure, like, if you would, for whatever reason, somehow get into a necromancer storyline and he's not a bad guy, this is just one little spell that he can use to talk to the corpse, or maybe he talks to a corpse of a character that he has slain and he gets a bunch of yes or no questions out of it. Pretty scary. It's a cantrip, so there's no limited uses on it like a player would have with Speak with Dead, because I felt like, why not? It's a necromancer. Let's look at the two leveled spells that they have. These are the two innate spells that they have. Command Corpse. You have to target a corpse, but it's within 10 feet of you. And then what he does is he rises a humanoid corpse or skeleton until it is dismissed or destroyed. He can have up to 2 under his command, and they follow all directions of the necromancer. I keep saying he, but it could be he, she, they, any gender or character can be a necromancer, really. And then that's the necromancer part. He can raise a humanoid corpse from the dead, and that way, if you wanted to, you can customize and make your own undead stat block, but I have pre-made ones also. And then of course we have Bone Bind. I picture a large cage of bone rises up from the ground and it restrains a target. They have to make a DC 12 strength save, and if they fail, they are restrained until they succeed that strength save at the end of each of their turns. So it's just a way for the necromancer to hold you in place. They can use this on you, and then all the zombies and skeletons get attacks of opportunity, or not attacks of opportunity, advantage on their attack rolls against you. So that's pretty dangerous. He combos with himself a little bit. So that was the lowest level necromancer. We'll briskly breeze through the 2 middle ones, and then I want to really focus on the highest level ones. So let's look at the next tier up. Okay, the next one up the line is the Expositor. This is a necromancer that has some years under his belt with necromancy. He's going to have a lot higher stats than the previous one you just seen. They really start ramping up in difficulty, and you're also going to see the most changes on this stat block. Very many more spells to cast. I might have actually gone overboard, so that's stuff I actually need feedback on in the comments down below. Please tell me if you're like, I like these custom spellcaster stat blocks, but I think they have too many spells. I think you could cut back on some of the spells, because I probably could, but it's fun to come up with custom spells. So this Expositor has saving throw proficiencies in intelligence and wisdom. They are immune to being charmed now. And of course they can speak any languages still. Their spell save DC has gone up from 12 to 15, and they now have a +7 to hit. Their spells count as level 4, So anything that's not a cantrip now counts as a level 4 spell for the purposes of counterspell. So going into the cantrips really quickly, these are all the same thing. It's just they have been upped in the damage category. So Grave Rot, Bone Scythe, Claws of the Damned instead of Claws of the Dead. Everything just does more damage. I don't know if I should change the names for every category as I go up in tiers. That's something that I want to hear from you guys, if that's too much, or if you think it's cool because it differentiates and it sounds like the Necromancer is actually like leveling up and getting more powerful. So they have a special action that they can use. This has no limited uses. They can just do this. It is called Commander of the Dead. And within 60 feet of the Necromancer, he can force up to 4 undead that have been animated by necromancy of tier 1 to obey its command until dismissed or destroyed. If the undead were raised by a rival necromancer, so if one of your players has like raised dead or something, or they're creating undead, that necromancer has to make an int contest with this necromancer, and whoever wins keeps command or gains command of those undead. So you can get into a quote-unquote wizard duel with another necromancer, and it becomes a kind of a funny scenario there. So let's get into the spells here. This is where we really start ramping up in some of the unique, creepy necromancy spells. Corpse Puppet instead of Command Corpse now. 60 feet, so in a 60-foot radius, the Necromancer can raise a large or smaller corpse or skeleton until it is dismissed or destroyed. He can have up to 4 under his command now. So he can raise ogres and stuff. So this shows that like the Necromancer is getting a better grasp of necromancy. He can start raising more powerful creatures. So don't just have zombies and stuff. Have like zombie ogres, zombie trolls, like anything that you can think of that's a big creature, zombie bears. You can have anything that you can put your mind to come up with. Necromancers can have that under their command. And necromancers are never going to be alone. That's what's scary about them. They always have meat shields. So the second one is Dead Weight. Now instead of you just being restrained, this one pulls you prone. So now you're restrained and prone, and that gets progressively worse as we go up. Visions of Demise. This is a wisdom save, or it does psychic damage, and you have disadvantage on all saving throws until the end of your next turn. Just try to think about what happens with this. He makes you foresee your death, so he plunges that vision into your mind. It's just a spell, so that not every single spell that he has does necrotic damage, but also keep in mind you're going to start seeing some really high damage spells. But the reason being, if you drink a potion of necrotic resistance, you have armor that gives you necrotic resistance. That heavily nerfs the damage output of a spellcaster who primarily focuses on one damage type. So that's why you're going to start seeing some stuff here that gets really deadly, like Drain Life, for example. He can only target a living creature. It's 60 feet, a 10-foot radius sphere. Well, actually, it doesn't target. It only affects living creatures. So each creature in that 10-foot radius sphere has to make this DC 15 con save, or they take 8d4 necrotic damage, and they gain a level of exhaustion. If they succeed, they only take half damage, and they get no exhaustion. Pretty damn scary. It's like necrotic fireball, almost. Except it does way less damage, but gives you exhaustion. Enfeebling Aura. It's a 20-foot radius. It's all living creatures again. They have to make a con save where they are poisoned for 1 minute, and while they're poisoned, they deal half damage with weapon attacks that use strength, but they repeat the save until the end of their turn. They repeat the save at the end of each of their turns, and it ends that effect. Fester Wounds. So if you you have to be missing hit points, but imagine he rapidly accelerates the rotting flesh on your body. He causes your wound to become necrosis and gangrened and like causes you to rot. So this actually does a lot of damage. It's 8d8 necrotic, and the target's wounds fester, dealing an additional 2d8 necrotic damage. This is a +7, so this is an attack roll to hit this one. And then Chilling Wind is a way for him to deal cold damage also. So it's a 5 foot wide, 50 foot long, 50 foot long line. It's a DC 15 strength save, or you take 6d6 cold damage, and your movement speed is reduced by 10 feet until you receive magical healing. That might, honestly, that should probably be Constitution, but maybe I had Strength in there, so it was, I don't know why it's Strength. That should probably actually be Constitution. And then he has a final bonus action spell. This is called Aspect of Doom. It lasts 5 minutes. He targets himself, and then this is essentially just a fear aura. So when you see the Necromancer, he maybe has like some shadowy morphing going on with his face. His eyes are glowing red. It makes him look really scary, so he can scare people. Now, that was the Expositor. We'll move into the next one. We'll go over that one really briefly, and then I'll really focus on the big Necromancer. So let's go to the next one. Okay, so this is the Necromancer Master. This is a tier 3 Necromancer, so he's meant for high-level players. This is going to be a challenge for them. I guarantee you that this will be a challenge for them. His saving throw DCs are very high with 19. He now has some actual special traits. So he has Siphon Life. All necrotic damage dealt to living creatures restores his hit points. He has Lifeless Vitality, so his maximum hit points cannot be reduced in any way, and he has advantage on saves versus poisons, and he also has magic resistance, so he's a lot more hardy. He has more damage resistances, so cold, necrotic, and poison. He's immune to being frightened now, so nothing scares him. He's seen the scariest things known to man in that he raises a lot of undead things, so we won't go through the cantrips. They're all just more powerful versions of the prior. Master of the Dead is a more powerful version of the prior Command Undead. His next list of spells are just more powerful versions of the prior, but now he has 2 times per use a day spells. So these are another category of more powerful spells, and he can use each of these 2 times a day, while the other ones are all now 3 times a day each. So they have a ton of spell slots, basically. Now, I can nerf that if need be, but of course these have to be play-tested. I have not gotten a chance to play-test these, I just eyeballed them, so that's what I'm using you guys for. You are my guinea pigs to use these necromancers and torture your players with them at their expense and your enjoyment. So, let's look at his very powerful spells here. The first one is Black Pyre. So a pyre is a flame, so essentially he summons a flame that is just completely pitch black. It's a flame that is devoid of light, yet it is somehow burning. So it's 150 feet out, and he makes a 30-foot radius. And what this does is that black fire actually does cold damage, and living creatures cannot regain hit points until targeted by a remove curse spell, unless they succeed that saving throw. And if they do succeed, they take half damage. So that's pretty scary. It's an AoE 30-foot radius curse. So your clerics and your paladins are going to be having to put that work in. And this is why necromancers are dangerous. They are the anathema to life itself. They should be dangerous. I feel like I captured that fairly well here. The next one is Soul Storm. I tried to put a lot of weight and emphasis behind a lot of the names for these. So Soul Storm is a thing that only affects living creatures, yet again, big surprise. It's a 120-foot radius around him, and it's a DC 19 con save where you take 4d10 plus 40 necrotic damage. I'm also experimenting with that so that instead of you having to roll like 8d10 and like calculate all of them, just roll 4d10 and add 40 onto that, so that's less math that you have to do. So on top of that damage, you are also going to age 1d100 years, and that aging can only be reversed with greater restoration within 24 hours of suffering that effect. That's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. The next one might be even more terrifying. This is Anti-Life Sphere. This is a 30-foot radius. It's concentration for 1 minute. And this is sort of like the fire ball that you could... Flaming Sphere. This is like Flaming Sphere, but necrotic. So it's a 10-foot diameter hovering orb of green-edged darkness. Living creatures that start their turn within 10 feet of that darkness take 8d6 necrotic damage. If you're inside the sphere, you take 16d6 damage instead. If that damage reduces you to 0, you die and your body is absorbed by the sphere, reappearing somewhere in the Shadowfell. That's terrifying. And the Necromancer can move the sphere up to 20 feet as a bonus action on each of its turns. So I think that's actually more like a Sphere of Annihilation, but this does necrotic damage instead of force damage. And then, of course, a final one, Death's Caress. This is a creepy one. You have to make a con save, or you're going to take 8d8 necrotic damage, or half on a success. If this reduces you to 0, you die and rise as a zombie at the start of the Necromancer's next turn. So pretty scary. And you can notice now that in his bonus actions, he can now raise dead as a bonus action. It's called Ravenous Legion, and it raises up to 6 corpses per cast instead of just 1 corpse at a time. So now you can really see like the change from the first tier Necromancer up to the third. He's really becoming a nuisance and raising a lot of creatures from the dead. Now let's look at the big final boss Necromancer next. Okay, my favorite, the Archmagister. This is the final boss Necromancer. These are definitely very terrifying. You shouldn't throw this at your players out of nowhere, but then again, maybe you should, because sometimes it's fun to throw some crazy things. So his intelligence is 26. Keep in mind, he's very intelligent. His saving throws are off the charts with con, intelligence, and wisdom. He is resistant to damage from non-radiant spells. So pretty scary. His saving throw DCs for every spell he casts is 22, and all of his spells that he casts count as level 7 for the purposes of counterspell. Everything that has the innate spell counts as level 7 to be counterspelled. So let's go through these. We're not going to go over, the cantrips. The cantrips are still just more powerful versions of the original cantrips. Lord of Undeath is a more powerful version of the other 2 special actions. So Bone Throne. This was a really cool ability that I came up with, and I thought it would be funny. And also, the Necromancer needs a way to fly, but I didn't want to just give him the fly spell, because that's not a necromancy. So how could I give him a spell that's in the necromancy category that allows him to fly? Bone Throne is how. So he summons a magical 10-foot radius skeletal throne made of negative energy, and that grants him a 60-foot fly speed for 10 minutes. And this is just something he can just do as an action. So you can dispel it, and he can fall, but he can just recast that on his next turn, which will take his action economy away, so he won't be able to cast any spells. That's the only thing he'll be able to do that turn, other than his bonus action stuff. So that's his. That's how he can now fly, which is scary. So let's get into his spells here. And I do want to go over these spells because they are pretty powerful and they are absolutely devastating. Every single one of them is devastating. So let's go with his regular 3-a-day spells. Eternal Rest. Remember that first spell that the first Necromancer had where he can just restrain you? Okay, yeah, well, let's dial that up to 1,000. So if you fail this strength save, you are restrained and pinned prone. If you're not on solid ground, so like concrete, stone, etc., you are pulled 30 feet underground by spectral hands and you are now suffocating. Is that not scary or what? Like, that's terrifying. Dissolution is his next spell. This is a wisdom save, and you take psychic damage and you gain disadvantage on all saves for 1 hour. That's pretty busted. Dispel Magic, I would say, would probably save you, or a restoration spell. I might need to add that in, but then again, this is supposed to be going up against 20th level characters, so 18 to 20, 17, 18, 19, 20, in that area. Enfeebling Veil. This is a way to just poison a bunch of characters, and they are poisoned until they are cured of that poison. So while they are poisoned, they deal half damage with weapon attacks that use strength. So literally, it's terrifying. I don't even know how else to say it. The Hollowing. You can only use this against a creature that has missing hit points. But out to 120 feet, he can deal 8d10 plus 30 necrotic damage, and the creature's wounds fester, which gives you a 4d10 dot damage on you, and that lasts until you are targeted by healing of 6th level or higher. So it is like your body is being bored out by necrotic energy. And then we have Winds of Death. This is a 20-foot wide, 100-foot long line of wind that does cold damage, and it reduces your movement speed by half until you receive magical healing. So it's almost like a curse in a way. Now let's look at some of his more powerful spells, and there is a finishing maneuver spell within here as well. So the Void, instead of Black Pyre, we now have the Void. This does 14d8 cold damage. Living creatures cannot regain HP until targeted by Remove Curse. Veil of Ages, 120-foot radius starting from the Necromancer. Everything in that radius has to make this con save, or they take 5d10 plus 50 necrotic damage, and they age 2d100 years, and that aging can only be reversed by a wish spell now. Yeah, I know. You're probably screaming at me through your monitor right now, but I can't hear you. I'm too busy aging your characters by 2d100 years. And then we have Anti-Life Sphere. This is the same thing, so this one actually doesn't change at all. This is just a deadly ability, and I didn't think it needed changed. Life Anathema is the final before the grand finale spell. This one is essentially Power Word Kill. So this is one living creature with 100 hit points or less. Out to 120 feet, it has to make a con save, or it dies instantly and rises as a zombie at the start of its next turn. DC 22 con save, that's high for anybody. The Barbarian could still succeed that fairly easily, but he has other spells that make you have disadvantage on all saving throws, remember that. So making a DC 22 con save with disadvantage, it's a little more fair than Power Word Kill, because Power Word Kill just happens. This one, you at least get a chance with a saving throw, but if you fail, you die and rise as a zombie. So you can't even be resurrected, because you're going to turn into a zombie. So it's actually kind of worse in a way if you think about it. Okay, now drum roll for the grand finale spell here. This is the big one. If you've seen the Pyromancer video, this is the equivalent to the Pyromancer summoning a volcano. This is called the Black Gate. This is a 1 mile radius. The Necromancer can concentrate on it for 1 hour. He opens a rift to the Shadowfell, shrouding the area in black void, extinguishing all light. Undead gain advantage on all d20 rolls. Living creatures that are not resistant or immune to necrotic damage become vulnerable to it. Creatures that are reduced to 0 while they're in that 1 mile radius are drawn into the Shadowfell. Non-Shadowfell natives must make a DC 22 Wisdom save at the start of each of their turn, or suffer overwhelming dread and have disadvantage on all d20 rolls until the start of their next turn. So the Necromancer is not affected by that, of course, but yeah, that's a scary spell. That's an absolutely terrifying spell. And notice how it also buffs up all his minions. So this is a really great enemy to use against your high-level paladins. Like, paladins don't typically have high-level necromancer stat blocks to battle. Now they do with this one. And let's look at the bonus actions really quickly. We have Army of Undeath, 120-foot radius, raise all corpses and skeletons. That in and of itself, terrifying, absolutely terrifying. I don't even need to expand upon it. Terrifying. He could just raise an army of undead within a 120-foot radius. He walks onto a battlefield, he instantly has 300 skeletons and zombies under his control. That is your your CR 20 Necromancer, essentially. That's what tier 4 is. And keep in mind, he can heal himself, so he does only have 144 hit points. So how do you beat this Necromancer? Anything that gives you resistance to necrotic damage. Anything that prevents him from regaining hit points. So like a Sword of Wounding, that cantrip that prevents you from restoring hit points. I think it's called Chill Touch. Those are like the two hardest counters against him. And he also takes the most damage from radiant damage because he's not resistant to it. So those are like your 3 ways of actually dealing with this guy. And obviously the classic that screws over every spellcaster in the game is like an anti-magic field of any sort. Turns this guy into nothing. He can only smash you on the head with his effigy staff for 1d6 damage. So there are ways to defeat him, but I built him to be pretty devastating. And he's going to be flying in his Bone Throne, so the barbarian can't just run up and multi-attack him. The fighter can't run up and multi-attack, action surge, delete him in 1 turn, hopefully speaking. He'll also have bodies in front of him, so they won't be able to just get to him real easily. And then we'll just do a real quick review of the little bonus stat blocks that I've made here. These are Thrall stat blocks, so if you don't want to come up with what stats the things that he's rising from the ground have, that's what these fill. So we'll go over these 2 things really quickly. Okay, so the first one is a skeletal Thrall. So this is a skeleton. Pretty weak, hit points of 13, AC of 12, but if he has a shield, it's 14. Your basic skeleton, vulnerable to bludgeoning and radiant damage, but it's resistant to cold, piercing, and slashing, and it has bone structure, so attacks that deal piercing damage are made at disadvantage against the skeleton because he doesn't have flesh to hit really easily, so your arrows go right through the rib cage. But on the off chance that you do hit him, you'll hit him. You can hit him in the eye socket with an arrow, of course, but I think that's a very iconic trait at this point. Necrotic Absorption, so the Necromancer casting those big AoE necrotic spells are going to be healing his own minions. And then the skeletons have ancient weaponry, so when they roll a 1 on an attack roll with their ancient weapons, it crumbles to dust. And then you can see ancient short sword and short bows, so they have some weapons, but they can crumble to dust, and then they're left with only their hands to bony scratch you. And then for the zombie here, we have the zombie Thrall. This one I feel like will be the most favorite because it's iconic. Zombies are always iconic and they're fun to run. So zombies have vulnerability to radiant damage, resistance to cold, immune to necrotic, poison, and psychic. They cannot be charmed, exhausted, frightened, poisoned, or unconscious. They still have undead fortitude. My zombies, of course, have necrotic absorption, so they heal from necrotic damage just like the skeletons. And my zombies can bite you, unlike the base game zombies that cannot bite you and just have a slam attack. So, Rotting Hands, they can do a slam attack still, or they can do Zombies Grasp, which it just forces a saving throw. Now, if enough of these are using this all at once and your fighter has to make 20 DC 11 strength saves, he might, mathematically speaking, roll a 1 out of all 20 of those saves, so eventually he will get grabbed. But you need a lot of zombies to be effective because they have such low damage. That's where the Necromancer comes in, where he's restraining targets, giving the zombies advantage and things like that. And of course, if the zombie bites you, you're going to take it 2d4 piercing damage, so that's the highest damage ability that they have, but they can only bite you if you are grappled or restrained. So if other zombies are grabbing you also, they can bite you. But yeah, that's gonna do it for the Necromancer stat blocks. These are on my Patreon, so if you are a merchant or a wanderer, you get these for just being a member. I was gonna say for free, but you get them for being a member. I also added a new tier recently for those that just want to support me, but they don't want to spend a lot of money. Just for $12 a year, or $1 a month, you can join my commoner tier. And, just toss me, a couple, just $1 a month. I think it comes out to like 75 cents after taxes and all that, but I appreciate all of you guys. Thank you for watching the video. Thank you for sticking through to the end. There's going to be more to come. This is DM Dungeon Mastery. Discord links are in the description, Patreon link in the description where you can get these stat blocks. Come to the Discord, hang out. I'm active in there every single day. I try to read everybody's comments. You can send me suggestions for stat blocks that you want to see me make, and it's DM Dungeon Mastery. I'm not saying goodnight. I'm just saying. I will see you in the next one. Thank you very much.